We can now make a distinction between three aspects of the revolution that in the present century are creating the new world in which mankind will live for the next 1,000 years. One aspect is almost wholly external, and it comes from the exercise of man's own powers. Another is almost wholly inward and hidden, and it comes from the action upon mankind of a spiritual power that we cannot know except in its results. The third stands between the two and can be looked upon as the collaboration between the spiritual and human powers. I call these aspects because they are not three different revolutions or even three distinct actions. It is the totality that shows us what is happening and what is likely to happen. In this lecture, we are concerned with the more spiritual aspects of the revolution. But before I speak of these, I ought to say something about the visible changes taking place in the world at the present time. You know as well as I do that we are in the midst of a great technological transformation, which is bringing great resources of energy to bear upon our practical problems. It is well known that this could lead to a serious, even a disastrous situation for the world. However much we may make progress in the technological sense, in the reduction of the deficiencies of the world, and even if we can avoid all disasters of the various kinds that appear to be threatened, there will still remain the problem of the general dehumanization of human life. This is well known. The solutions that are proposed, whether seriously or mockingly, are still all turn upon some form of sense perception, some kind of energy exchange, some kind of mental or emotional process. These cannot produce the compensation that is necessary for human life to be stabilized, to pass through the next phase of our development. It can only come if there is a great increase in the power of sympathetic understanding between people. There are different ways in which a genuine experience of an unseen reality can be given to people. But I think that all these different ways depend in the long run upon a certain substance which makes this possible. This substance is not another kind of energy, and I think that our language has not got an appropriate word for it. We have got words such as grace or blessing, which we use to express a substance which, when given to people, enables them to have an experience beyond the senses. It also enables them to undergo a transformation, to change their nature in some way that is not due to any cause. This is usually taken to be some kind of action, a spiritual working within the soul, and this view is certainly not wrong. But I think that we should look at it in a way that perhaps could be better visualized. I shall say that there is a certain spiritual substance present everywhere, but able to flow into our lives only through particular channels. Because it flows through different channels, it has the appearance of being different, but it is the same spiritual substance throughout. And if some people have an awakening of this other form of perception, it is really a participation in this spiritual substance through which direct connections are made that do not depend upon things being exchanged or transferred. This spiritual substance is not subject to the laws of space and time like material things are, and that is why it can produce phenomena that are so difficult to account for, such as precognition or communications between the living and the dead. It is sometimes able to reach individuals, but almost always when it does, it is powerfully affected by the nature of that particular individual, and it is so charged with the subjectivity of that person that the nature of the substance itself can be hardly recognized. So that it looks as if that particular individual has certain unusual abilities. Then we say that the person is a medium or a clairvoyant, or that he or she is a genius in this or that field. For example, he could be a Mozart. There is someone who has the power to foretell the future. Another again can cure diseases. Always these extraordinary powers can be referred back to one substance. The differences are only because the instrument is different in different cases. Nearly all the cases that can be described by the word genius. But what is a genius? Why has one man in a million a particular gift intensified to such a degree that he stands apart from all the rest? These gifts certainly do appear, and have always appeared among people. But this sporadic appearance among individuals cannot get us very far. The question is whether it is possible for this gift to be shared, for conditions to be created, so that it can come to more people. And that is, of course, what attracts so many people to various movements which in one way or another promise this. And if these movements have anything that is genuine in them, I am sure it is that they have in some way a connection with the source from which this universal substance flows. I also would go further than this and say that although this substance is no doubt universal, not confined obviously only to this earth of ours, so far as terrestrial history of mankind is concerned, it probably has certain major channels through which it has been flowing in the course of human history. The spiritual revolution about which I am speaking can be described as a fresh entry of this spiritual substance into human life through a great variety of channels, sometimes through individuals, sometimes spread through great organizations, sometimes affecting the whole atmosphere, the climate of the world, as when political tensions are relieved without assignable cause. Probably the most important for the future and for practical purposes is the possibility of creating conditions where this substance can enter into a certain number of people so that they themselves can become transmitters of it. Since the substance itself is not merely invisible and intangible, but out of the range of our thought and feeling powers, no one can recognize it as ubiquitous and omnipotent. It flows in many channels, and each channel gives its own character to the action. Even if there is only a small trickle of the true spiritual substance, the results may be spectacular or strange. Those who experience these results, or even only observe them in others, tend to be carried away by the taste of an authentic experience, and to accept the channel through which it reached them as the one and only valid spiritual source. Owing to the tendency of the human mind to work by yes and no, the affirmation of validity of the channel from which they have received spiritual nourishment seems to require the denial of the validity of any other channel, especially if it gives results that seem to be quite different from the first. From this simple process, we see arising all over the world a diversity of spiritual movements, each claiming special validity and in practice, if not in theory, rejecting all the others. No doubt you all have met with this mutual rejection of apparently similar movements. I meet it more than most. I am constantly asked questions about this on the lines of, if there is a general spiritual action in the world, how do you account for the fact that it appears as divided into a number of warring sects or mutually rejecting movements, each claiming to be spiritual or claiming to come from a man of superhuman genius or even directly from a divine source? The answer to that is that, as with the individual, so with the group, there is a certain characterization due to the channel through which this substance flows. Everyone who receives it transmits it according to his own nature. Only very few can see that there are many ways, and that all can lead to the spiritual perfection. Indeed, it is not true that all are equal, for each channel distorts or imprints the spiritual substance with its own characteristics, and these may sometimes contain seriously undesirable elements. It would be true to say that every channel is vitiated by some limitation of the particular experience through which it began to enter into human life. The truth is that there is a need for diversity. Different ingredients must enter into the cake. It is rather like this, that somebody hears it is a good thing to have currants in a cake. Then he goes about starting a movement based on the slogan, "Currants for cakes." Then somebody else says, "This is not going far enough. Every cake should have currants in it." So a movement arises which says, "You must always put currants in cakes." But still people say, "But this is not being loyal to currants. We must have a movement saying never make a cake without anything but currants." And then there comes to be the currants only attitude towards cake making. This attitude implies the rejection of every other ingredient except currants. And we do see in the world quite a lot of these currants only movements. However good currants may be, currants alone will not make a cake. And I want to suggest some practical conclusions. None of us is capable of doing anything on the scale of the world situation. This is taken care of by a power far greater than our own. For, as you have realized, I am personally convinced that there is a spiritual power now working in the world. All any of us can do is to participate in or lend ourselves to the action of this power. We cannot direct it. We certainly cannot control it. But we can, to the extent of our own understanding, make ourselves useful instruments for this action. We start with the hypothesis that a spiritual action is taking place in the world at the present time, and that it operates through a substance that is not material but spiritual. I would say that it has the character of will rather than energy. This will substance acts upon all who can respond to it. It acts upon individuals, upon groups, society, nations, governments, each according to its own nature. It can be studied only by its action, not in itself, because, as I have already emphasized, it is not subject to the laws of time, space, and causality. If it has any property that can be described, I would call it a structuring power. It can be studied in its visible effects, but these are indirect and do not bring us directly into contact with it. The only way of having direct experience is to observe its action upon ourselves. We then find that it has various actions according to the way we take it. These various actions are like the ingredients of the cake in the simile I just used now. It would be convenient here to introduce the word providence, which I have not previously used. When we speak of providence, we imply rather a complicated set of beliefs. Firstly, we assume that there is a purpose in existence that is to be realized in time and space, that is, in the material world. Secondly, we ascribe this purpose to a source that is beyond existence itself, and therefore not subject to the laws of time, place, and causality. This we can express by such words as eternal plan. We can only picture this plan as an ideal structure to which history is intended to conform. Thirdly, the plan or structure is not yet fulfilled, but must be realized. The realization of the plan requires a twofold action, one part within existence itself, and the other. The part that comes from beyond space and time we call the working of providence. Fourthly, the realization of the plan involves us men as responsible beings, able, to some extent at least, to see what is wanted and to participate or cooperate in its fulfillment. We can apply these ideas to what we have studied in these lectures. The world is passing through a transition period in which a new age or epoch is being prepared. There is the threefold action: external, inward, and intermediary, of which I have spoken. The whole of humanity is involved, willy-nilly, in the first or external action. This does not depend on whether we believe in providence or not. Even confirmed atheists are affected by it. The result is that dangerous and destructive tendencies are diverted into safer channels. Tensions are released. Kindness, forbearance, and tolerance make themselves felt in the most unexpected quarters. Against all probability, a new feeling of hope for the future is kindled everywhere. All this happens in the midst of appalling chaos and muddle. We read our newspapers and see every corner of the earth in disorder. Human passions are as violent as ever, and yet the spirit of peace gains ground. Such is the first or external action that is wholly providential, that is, spiritual, in its source, and wholly external, that is, material, in its operation. The second action is spiritual in source and in action. It is hidden from the sight of men. It works through the mysterious immaterial substance of which I spoke earlier. It has a continuity of tradition that spans the ages of human history. Its action is known only to those who have entered into the realms of pure spiritual action. Here the structure of the providential plan is discerned to the extent that it is even revealed to humankind. An important characteristic of the second action is the rise and fall of its intensity. For centuries it remains almost totally quiet. Then the times of change approach, and it awakens and begins to send out currents and streams of the spiritual substance. This leads to the third action, which is concerned with the harmonization of the visible and the invisible. For this, people must be specially prepared both to understand what is required and also to have the strength and courage to do it. Such people cannot work in isolation, and that is why new movements are started. Each new movement, if it is authentic at all, draws from the great reservoir of the spiritual substance, and from this it gains its life and power. In return, it is required to serve the providential plan, and that means to take its place in the total structure. No isolation, and above all, no self-seeking are permissible here. One of the many forms of the third activity consists in building bridges between the visible and the invisible streams. In the present day, one of the most important bridges is that which will open the way to free exchanges between science and religion, between the world of cause and effect and the world of structure. This bridge is beginning to take shape and will bring us to the true and lasting solution of these two cultures. A second bridge is between the Eastern and the Western traditions, which for nearly 3,000 years have flowed in separate channels. In all that is going on, we can discern at least one unmistakable characteristic of the new world that is being prepared. It will be one world in every sense of the word. It will not be a world of static perfection. We are far, far away from that. It will be a world with its own problems, created chiefly by all the tremendous pressures resulting from the close exchanges between human beings that one world will make inevitable. In many ways, it will be a very hard world to live in. We can do a great deal even now to make it a possible world by setting ourselves to understand better and better what is happening and to find our own place in the eternal structure. So long as we are imperfect, there cannot be only one movement. Each one of us will transmit differently what we receive from the one source. Our imperfections will result in our transmitting imperfectly. There is another side to it also, and that is there need to be differences. It is necessary that there should be different ingredients, that there should be different ways of understanding, and that these differences should be respected. Unity is not uniformity. It is not the stamping of a single pattern on everything. Unity is a harmony within a total pattern of many diverse things. What is necessary is an acceptance. To learn to accept that something which is totally different to my particular belief may also be valid. It is that one simple thing that has to be done. That is, to accept the possibility that something that seems to me to be quite absurd may after all be valid, and that in being valid it need not destroy what I believe in. We have always that fear that if something else is proved to be true, our truth will somehow suffer. It is not really like that. This is somehow thinking that there is a rivalry between flour and water in making bread. There is no rivalry. It is a habit, a bad habit, due to centuries, even thousands of years, of setting everything in terms of sense perception and mental constructions. Because as far as mental constructions are concerned, one truth excludes another. In the new epoch that we are speaking about, it is not like that. One truth does not exclude another.